Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Listen, we have all been watching with some excitement all of the executive orders flying out of this particular administration, some of which have actually pertained to issues related to our Second Amendment rights. But many of us reside in states where the problem is not what the federal government's doing to us. No, it's rather what state and local government is doing to us. And many people have asked this question of, well, how soon before the president can start helping us in this state? And the question really is, it's not about how soon, but whether he can at all. We're going to break it all down for you today, and then we're going to show that perhaps this administration is at least beginning to make some of those efforts. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about, can Trump even protect you from your state's gun laws? Okay, America, this is what we're talking about. We know right now that this current presidential administration is taking a deep dive into all of the attacks and infringements that occurred from a federal level on our Second Amendment rights during the previous presidential administration. But if you live in a state like mine, or California, or Illinois, or New York, or New Jersey, or Hawaii, or Maryland, and a handful of others, you know that our problems do not come from the federal government. No, our problems come from the state government. And so the question then is now that we've had this radical change in philosophy in the White House, what, if anything, can they do to protect us out here in Washington and the folks in California and Illinois and all those other states? And the answer is probably not a whole lot right now, but let's break it down for you, and then let's talk about something that the White House is doing through the Department of Justice that I think is mildly encouraging. Okay, so how could the federal government and the Trump administration actually protect you if you are in a civilian disarmament state? Well, the first thing that could happen wouldn't even come from the White House at all. It would actually come from the Article 1 branch of government, and that would be that we could have federal legislation passed that would supersede any state law. So if you actually had a federal law that said assault weapon bans are unlawful, that magazine bans are unlawful, that theoretically would supersede state law. What's the likelihood of that occurring? Why doesn't everyone just go outside and start throwing rocks at the moon at the same time? Because we're talking about the same statistical odds there. Okay, the second thing they could do is they could start getting involved in current lawsuits. So, for example, out here in Washington State, we got a case called State of Washington versus Gators Guns. It's a challenge to Washington's magazine ban. And there are a litany of other cases kicking around in state governments as well as some down in the federal circuit courts. The United States government could participate or ask to participate in these as amicus parties and could proffer arguments on behalf of gun rights. Now, what's the likelihood of that occurring? I don't know. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of political capital to do it. Certainly the resources are there for the Department of Justice to participate in an amicus process. So that is a possibility. But even that possibility, you got to acknowledge that, well, what we're doing is we're working things through the court system. So is that providing you immediate relief? Absolutely not. And then the third thing that could happen is you could theoretically have the United States government file suit against states for violating the Second Amendment rights of their citizens. Now, what's the likelihood of that right now? I would say the likelihood of that is incredibly remote. And furthermore, if in fact you were going to bring suits like that, one would think that the Department of Justice would want to commence an investigation first to make sure that you actually have all the ammunition you need for that lawsuit. So absent some kind of an investigation into this, I don't know if that third option is really viable. But, and this is the big however, in recent days we have seen both the White House and the Department of Justice announce initiatives in which they would, in fact, be seriously investigating potential infringements of Second Amendment rights at the local level in various jurisdictions. The first one comes in Washington, D.C., from a presidential executive order on March 28th entitled Making the District of Columbia Safe and Beautiful. And what it creates is a task force. Okay, great. But the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force, which is now implemented through this executive order, has many, many things that they are tasked with doing to go out and to investigate, to figure out what's going on. How do we make the District of Columbia a safer community? However, one of the very clear announcements in that executive order is The task force shall coordinate to ensure effective federal participation in the following tasks. 5. Collaborating with appropriate local government entities to provide assistance to increase the speed and lower the cost of processing concealed carry license requests in the District of Columbia. As we know, the District of Columbia has never had a gun law that it didn't absolutely positively adore. As you know, this is the jurisdiction that actually tried to do an outright ban on handguns. And obviously, as you can imagine, the concealed carry process in the District of Columbia is virtually impossible. So, pursuant to executive order, this new task force will have to examine and come up with ways to streamline that process. Obviously, an investigation will be conducted to figure out what the problem is. And since the Department of Justice is part of this task force, there is the potential to investigate nefarious activities on behalf of the District of Columbia. But then, on the other side of the country, we get an announcement the same day from Attorney General Pam Bondi's office that they are going to commence an investigation into Los Angeles for concealed carry permit issues as well. The press release entitled U.S. Department of Justice announces Second Amendment pattern or practice investigation into California's Los Angeles County. Now listen, this announcement from the Attorney General has some pretty strong language in it, and we're going to go ahead and share portions of it with you in a moment. Now I recognize that we all can agree that Attorney General Bondi talks a really good game. Does she walk a really good game? Well, the jury is definitely out. I understand many of you have reservations, and for good reason about that. But the announcement from the Attorney General reads as follows. Protecting the Second Amendment rights of ordinary law-abiding Americans is a high priority for this administration. As part of a broader review of restrictive firearms-related laws in California and other states, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division today announced an investigation into the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to determine whether it's engaging in a pattern or practice of depriving ordinary law-abiding Californians of their Second Amendment rights. And of course, this is based on a really successful lawsuit brought by 2 Los Angeles residents, which found in favor of both of them. And of course, the Attorney General's office is saying, well, listen, if it applied to these 2, I bet it's applying to just about everybody in Los Angeles County. The Attorney General also goes on to state, the Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. And over the past 2 decades, the Supreme Court has recognized that the Second Amendment is a fundamental individual constitutional right and has taken multiple opportunities to strengthen Second Amendment protections for ordinary law-abiding citizens. Some states and localities, however, have resisted this recent pro-Second Amendment case law, and California has been a particularly egregious offender. And how so? Well, you really don't have to look too far to figure out that depending on what part of California you're in, you may be waiting well more than a year, and you may be spending thousands of dollars for what California determines is a privilege to carry a firearm and protect your life. This Department of Justice will not stand idly by while states and localities infringe on the Second Amendment rights of ordinary law-abiding Americans. The Second Amendment is not a second-class right, and under my watch, the department will actively enforce the Second Amendment just like it actively enforces other fundamental constitutional rights. Okay, so is the rubber going to meet the road on that last statement? Because I can assure you right now, Attorney General Bondi, there are numerous states which are trampling all over Second Amendment rights of their respective citizens. But then the Attorney General's language gets even stronger. But if necessary, today's announcement will be the first of many similar investigations, lawsuits, or other actions involving other localities in California, the state of California itself, and any other states or localities that insist on unduly burdening or effectively denying the Second Amendment rights of their ordinary, law-abiding citizens. That is extremely strong language from the Attorney General, and ultimately, I can assure you that if this Attorney General does fail, it will be because she absolutely positively overpromised and underdelivered. So, is it possible that the Trump administration can come in and save some of you that are living behind the iron curtain of civilian disarmament? Yes, it is possible, but there are very few avenues in which it could be done. This is one avenue that may be in the development right now. We can only hope. Listen, we're going to go ahead and link up the president's executive order down below. We'll go ahead and link up the DOJ press release down below so you can geek out on them for yourself. If you got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, tell us all about it by clicking on that link right there. If you want to subscribe to the monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that's down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, America, let's remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.